The aroma of freshly baked bread filled my tiny kitchen as I checked the sort of loaves cooling on the rack. Perfect crust, perfect crumb. My grandmother's recipe hadn't failed me yet. But according to my in-laws, artisanal bread was just another example of my wasteful approach to running a restaurant. Nobody pays $20 for bread anymore. Claire, Patricia Davidson's voice rang in my memory as I prepared for another dinner service. People want quick, convenient, consistent. That's why Davidson's Diners has 30 locations across 3 states. I pushed the thought away, focusing on the prep list for tonight. My restaurant, The Hidden Garden, might be small, just 40 seats in a converted Victorian house. But every dish that left my kitchen was a piece of my heart on a plate. The sound of the back door opening pulled me from my thoughts. Chef, the produce delivery is here, called Lisa, my sous chef and best friend since culinary school. And you need to see this. I followed her out to the delivery dock, where Marcus from Local Roots Farm stood with a worried expression. Claire, I'm sorry, he started, but the Davidsons' new distribution company bought out our contract. They're saying we can't sell to individual restaurants anymore. My stomach dropped. This wasn't the first time my in-laws had tried to interfere with my business, but targeting my suppliers was a new low. Marcus had been providing my vegetables since opening day 3 years ago. His heirloom tomatoes and rare herbs were crucial to my seasonal menu. When? I asked, already calculating how this would affect tonight's service. End of the week. They're consolidating all restaurant supply under Davidson distribution now. Marcus looked miserable. I tried to fight it, but they threatened to blacklist me with other buyers. I placed a comforting hand on his arm. It's not your fault. We'll figure something out. Back in the kitchen, Lisa watched me with concern as I aggressively chopped herbs. They're trying to shut us down, aren't they? They've been trying since day one, I replied, setting down my knife before I hurt myself. Remember, the health inspector visits every week for 2 months. The mysterious calls to the liquor board. The anonymous complaints to the city about our parking. The Davidsons had made their disapproval clear from the moment their son Jack announced he was marrying a chef rather than the real estate developer they picked out for him. But their campaign against the Hidden Garden had intensified after I refused their generous offer to sell the restaurant and come work as a line cook at one of their diners. Your little experiment has been fun, Richard Davidson had said during that tense meeting 6 months ago. But it's time to be practical. Join the family business. We'll even let you revamp some of our menu items. The condescension in his voice still made my blood boil. I trained at the Culinary Institute of America, apprenticed under Michelin-starred chefs in France, and spent years developing my own style. The idea of reducing my cuisine to microwaved appetizers and frozen desserts was insulting. We'll find new suppliers, Lisa said firmly, pulling me back to the present. Maybe we can work with that urban farming collective you met at the food festival. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Parents want us over for dinner tonight. Says it's important. Sorry, I know you have service. I showed Lisa the message. She immediately started shaking her head. Don't go. It's obviously a trap. If I don't go, they'll just show up here during dinner rush. Remember Valentine's Day? The surprise visit during our busiest service of the year had resulted in Patricia loudly criticizing everything from our plating to our wine list, while Richard cornered our regulars to tell them about his concerns regarding our food safety practices. I'll handle service, Lisa offered. We're only half booked anyway, thanks to those fake reviews they've been posting. The flood of 1-star reviews had started appearing 2 weeks ago, all from newly created accounts, all complaining about problems we'd never had. Found a hair in my food. Got food poisoning. Rude service and overpriced menu. We'd reported them as fake, but the damage to our ratings was already done. I arrived at the Davidsons' mansion that evening still wearing my chef's coat, a deliberate choice that I knew would irritate Patricia's sense of proper dinner attire. Their housekeeper led me to the formal dining room, where Jack was already seated with his parents. Claire, darling, Patricia air-kissed my cheek, her diamond rings catching the light. We've been so worried about you. Have you? I took my seat, noting the china was from their Davidsons Diners product line. Is that why you're trying to cut off my produce supply? Richard didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Business is business. Davidson Distribution needs to establish market dominance, and these exclusive contracts are standard practice. There's nothing standard about deliberately targeting your daughter-in-law's suppliers. Oh, don't be so dramatic. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. We're trying to help you. Your little restaurant is bleeding money. Don't think we haven't seen the numbers. I stiffened. How did you see my financial records? We have friends at the bank, Richard said smugly. Friends who share our concerns about your business model. Artisanal this, farm to table that. It's all very precious, but it's not sustainable. Jack shifted uncomfortably beside me but said nothing. His silence hurt more than his parents' words. Your lease is up for renewal soon, isn't it? Patricia's voice was honey-sweet poison. Commercial rent in that area has doubled in the last year. Such a shame. The implications were clear. They'd seen my finances, knew I was operating on thin margins, and were systematically cutting off my resources. The produce contract was just the beginning. What do you want? I asked tiredly. Richard slid a folder across the table. We're prepared to offer you a very generous package. The Davidson family name carries weight in the restaurant industry. With your technical skills and our business acumen, we could create something special. I opened the folder. Inside was a contract offering me the position of Regional Menu Development Coordinator for Davidsons Diners. The salary was impressive, I had to admit. More than I'd made in the last 3 years combined. Think about it, Patricia urged. No more 60-hour weeks in a hot kitchen. No more worrying about suppliers and rent and reviews. You'd have security, benefits, a real future. A future reheating frozen meals and microwaving sauce packets. The words came out sharper than I intended. Better than bankrupting your husband with your vanity project, Richard snapped. Jack deserves better than watching his wife throw away their financial security on overpriced ingredients and empty tables. I turned to Jack, who was studying his plate with intense concentration. Is that what you think? That I'm bankrupting us? He finally looked up, his expression torn. I love your food, Claire. You know that. But maybe they have a point about the business side of things. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. I stood up, my chair scraping against their perfect hardwood floors. The Hidden Garden isn't just a restaurant to me. It's my dream, my heritage, my grandmother's recipes brought to life. But you've never understood that, have you? Any of you? Dreams don't pay mortgages, Richard said flatly. You have until the end of the month to accept our offer. After that, he shrugged eloquently. I left without touching their mass-produced dinner, my mind racing. They had me cornered. No suppliers, sabotaged reviews, and apparently friends at the bank who could make loan applications disappear. Everything I built was at risk. But as I drove back to my restaurant, determination replaced fear. My grandmother hadn't escaped war-torn Vietnam with nothing but her recipes and her courage just for me to give up at the first sign of trouble. The Davidsons might have money and power, but I had something they'd never understand. Passion, creativity, and a kitchen full of people who believed in my vision. When I walked back into the Hidden Garden, Lisa took one look at my face and grabbed 2 wine glasses. Tell me everything. I recounted the dinner while we sat at the bar, the last customers of the night finishing their desserts in the dining room. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Remember that food critic who came in last week? She finally said. The one who asked all those questions about our fermentation techniques. I nodded. We'd had several critics lately, though none had published reviews yet. Well, Lisa's eyes sparkled with suppressed excitement. I wasn't supposed to say anything until it was official, but she pulled out her phone and showed me an email that would change everything. My hands trembled as I read the email from Michelin's North American division. The critic who'd visited last week wasn't just any reviewer. He was a Michelin inspector, and he wasn't finished with us yet. They're coming back 3 more times before making their final decision, Lisa explained, barely containing her excitement. But the inspector told me off the record that he hasn't had food this good since his last trip to Paris. A Michelin star. The thought was almost too big to process. In the culinary world, there was no higher honor, no more prestigious recognition. Davidson's diners might have quantity, but this was about quality at its highest level. We can't tell anyone, I said, though I was grinning so hard my face hurt. Not until it's official. Not even Jack. My smile faded slightly. Especially not Jack. Not after tonight. The next few weeks were a carefully choreographed dance of survival and secrecy. During the day, I worked my connections in the restaurant community, finding new suppliers willing to risk the Davidsons' displeasure. A collective of urban farmers agreed to provide our produce. A small fishing cooperative offered to sell us their catch directly. Even Marcus secretly helped, connecting us with other independent growers. At night, I experimented with new dishes, pushing myself to elevate every recipe. If Michaelin was watching, I intended to show them everything I could do. Lisa matched my intensity, our kitchen humming with focused energy during every service. Jack noticed the change in me. "You seem different," he said one morning as I headed to work early. Again, more determined. "I'm fighting for my restaurant," I replied simply. "For everything I believe in." He shifted uncomfortably. "My parents' offer is an attempt to destroy everything I've built and turn me into their employee. Is that really what you want from me, Jack?" He didn't answer, and I left for work with another small piece of my heart cracking. The Davidsons escalated their pressure. Health inspectors appeared weekly, though they never found violations. Our liquor license renewal was mysteriously delayed. Suppliers who worked with us faced sudden delivery problems with their Davidson distribution orders. But something unexpected happened. The more they squeezed, the more the local restaurant community rallied around us. Other independent restaurants began sharing their suppliers. Chefs sent their regulars our way. Food bloggers wrote about our hidden gem status and the mysterious forces trying to shut us down. Our tables began filling up again. Not just filling, we had a waiting list. The fake reviews were buried under genuine praise. Each night, I poured my heart into every dish, never knowing if the Michelin inspector was among our guests. Then came the night that changed everything. I was in the kitchen expediting orders when Lisa burst through the door. "The Davidsons are here. All of them. And they're with the bank manager." My heart stuttered. Today was the deadline they'd given me to accept their offer. Of course they'd come to gloat, to watch me squirm. "Seat them at table 7, I said, naming the table directly in front of our open kitchen. "They want a show. Let's give them one." I channeled my grandmother's spirit as I cooked, remembering her lessons about letting love flow through your hands into the food. For Richard, I prepared our aged beef tartare with fermented chilies and cured egg yolk, a dish that required immense skill to balance but looked deceptively simple. For Patricia, the heirloom tomato tart with herbs from our rooftop garden. For the bank manager, butter poached lobster with sauce made from the shells. And for Jack, I made the first dish I ever cooked for him. Sourdough bread with cultured butter. A reminder of simpler times when he believed in my dreams. I was plating their entrees when the commotion started in the dining room. Through the kitchen window, I saw Patricia standing, her face flushed with anger. Richard was arguing with someone, a distinguished-looking man I didn't recognize. Lisa appeared at my side. "Claire, that's Jean-Luc Bouvier, the head of Michelin's North American division." Time seemed to slow as I watched Jean-Luc approach the kitchen window, Patricia's shrill voice carrying clearly. "This place? A Michelin star? Impossible." "Not impossible, madame." Jean-Luc's French accent was pronounced but clear. "In fact, it is already decided. We simply came tonight to deliver the news in person." He turned to me, his eyes twinkling. "Chef Harrison, your restaurant will be receiving its first Michelin star in this year's guide. Your combination of traditional techniques with innovative flavors, your respect for ingredients, and your clear passion for cuisine. C'est magnifique." The kitchen erupted in cheers. Servers hugged, line cooks high-fived, and Lisa burst into tears. Through it all, I stood frozen, watching the color drain from the Davidsons' faces. But they're closing," Richard sputtered. "The lease, the suppliers." Jean-Luc raised an eyebrow. "Closing? Non. The Hidden Garden has been selected as one of our ones to watch. Restaurants we expect to earn more stars in coming years. In fact," he smiled broadly, "we are featuring Chef Harrison's story in our publication. Her journey from her grandmother's Vietnamese kitchen to culinary school to creating this magnificent establishment. It is exactly the kind of passion we celebrate." The bank manager, who had been quietly eating his lobster, suddenly looked very interested. "More stars? Feature publication? Mr. Davidson, you didn't mention any of this when you were expressing concerns about the restaurant's viability." Patricia tried to salvage the situation. "Claire, darling, this is wonderful. We always knew you had potential. In fact, we've been trying to partner with you." "Partner?" Jean-Luc looked confused. But we heard rumors about forced buyouts, supplier interference, orchestrated bad reviews. He shook his head sadly. Such practices, they do not reflect well on the culinary community. I have all the documentation, I said quietly, finally finding my voice. Every threat, every manipulated inspection, every fake review traced back to Davidson corporate IPs. I was saving it for a lawyer, but perhaps the press would be interested too. Restaurant chain tries to sabotage Michelin-starred chef. That would make quite a headline. Richard's face went from white to red. You wouldn't dare. The damage to the family name. The family name? I laughed. You mean the name you've spent decades building through intimidation and bullying? The name you used to crush independent restaurants and force suppliers into exclusive contracts? That family name. Claire. Jack stood up, his expression conflicted. Maybe we can find a compromise. No. The word came out firm final. No more compromises. No more trying to please people who will never respect what I do. I've made my choice, Jack. Now you need to make yours. The next hour was a blur of congratulations, champagne, and tears of joy from my staff. Jean Luc stayed, asking questions about my techniques and vision. The bank manager quietly mentioned that he'd be happy to discuss expansion loans whenever I was ready. The Davidsons slipped out somewhere in a celebration, leaving Jack standing alone in the middle of my busy dining room. I'm sorry, he said when the crowd thinned. I should have stood up to them. Should have believed in you more. Yes, I agreed, you should have. But you still don't really understand, do you? This isn't about proving them wrong or getting revenge. It's about staying true to what I believe in, what I love. When was the last time you felt that kind of passion about anything? He had no answer. The next few months brought changes I could never have predicted. The Hidden Garden became the hottest reservation in town. Food magazines wanted interviews. Culinary students begged for apprenticeships. Davidson's diners faced a PR nightmare when our story leaked, their stock price plummeting as more restaurants came forward with similar tales of intimidation. Jack and I separated amicably, both recognizing that we wanted different things from life. Last I heard, he'd left his parents' company to open a small bookstore, following his own passion at last. I expanded the Hidden Garden, but not the way the Davidsons would have. Instead of chain restaurants, I opened a culinary school focusing on traditional techniques and sustainable practices. Lisa became head chef at the restaurant, allowing me to split my time between cooking and teaching. Patricia sent a piece offering 6 months later, a Davidson's Diners gift card with a note saying, "No hard feelings." I donated it to a homeless shelter and sent her our new tasting menu in return. She actually came in to try it, and while she'll never fully understand my choices, she admitted the food was quite good. Richard took longer to come around, but market forces did what my arguments couldn't. Davidson's Diners had to reinvent itself after the PR crisis, focusing more on quality and local sourcing. They even started buying produce from Marcus's farm. My grandmother's portrait now hangs in the Hidden Garden's entrance, her warm smile watching over every service. Below it, I've framed her original recipe for the sourdough bread that started everything, along with our Michelin star. Last week, a young chef came to me for advice. Her family wanted her to take over their chain of fast food restaurants, but she dreamed of opening a small patisserie focused on traditional French techniques. Everyone says I'm crazy. She told me that I'm throwing away a sure thing for some foolish dream. I took her into my kitchen, showed her the organized chaos of a busy service, the fresh ingredients waiting to become something magical, the staff moving like dancers in a complicated ballet of creation. Dreams aren't foolish if you're willing to fight for them, I said, handing her an apron. Now let me teach you about sourdough. The Hidden Garden's dining room was full that night, as it is most nights now. But success isn't measured in packed tables or critical acclaim. It's measured in the smile on a guest's face when they taste something extraordinary, in the pride of my staff when they master a difficult technique, in the knowledge that every day we're creating more than just meals. We're creating experiences, memories, moments of joy. As I worked the line that evening, my hands moving through familiar motions passed down through generations, I caught the scent of fresh bread baking. Some things, I've learned, can't be mass-produced or rushed. Some things require time, patience, and love to reach their full potential. Whether it's a perfect loaf of sourdough, a Michelin-starred restaurant, or the courage to stand up for what you believe in. The Davidsons never understood that there's more than one way to measure success. They saw numbers on a spreadsheet where I saw faces lit up with pleasure. They counted dollars while I counted moments of culinary revelation. They built an empire of mediocrity while I created a sanctuary of excellence. But in the end, this isn't a story about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It's about staying true to your passion, even when the world tells you to compromise. About believing in the power of real food to bring people together, to create community, to inspire joy. Every morning when I unlock the hidden garden's doors, I remember my grandmother's words. Cook with love, and the food will speak for itself. She was right, as she so often was. In a world of shortcuts and substitutions, there's still room for authenticity, for tradition, for dreams made real one careful dish at a time. And that, more than any star or review, is the sweetest victory of all.